Hello, Amplify You. Michelle Abraham here, your host, and I am excited to bring you today another great interview. We are talking behind the mic with podcast host Janet Fish of the Breakaway Entrepreneur Podcast. Janet was a corporate executive turned serial entrepreneur. She's worn many hats in her life. She is a breakaway business. Coaching is her business, and she is just here to help you make more money, have better mindset as entrepreneurs, and just, really accelerate in life. So Janet, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm excited to dive into this.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm super excited to be on today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I almost said have you because I'm so used to doing that.
Right? I know. You're used to being the host. It's a little bit of a
used to being on the other side.
Right? Which is why I love interviewing podcast hosts, because sometimes podcast hosts stick in the hosting space and they don't get to go out and share their messages often. So I love showcasing shows and new shows that people can go and listen to, especially in the entrepreneurial space. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your show?
Yeah, so I actually have a mentor who, start back with, I've been blogging forever, and I just got to the point where I could not blog again. I could not write another blog post. And I had one of my mentors, and what I really want to do is connect more online. Most of my business comes from referrals and networking, and I really wanted to expand online. And so he said, think about a podcast. And so I did some research, and there were two things that really inspired me to start a podcast. The first one was people who listen to podcasts are very different people than read blog posts. So there's a whole community of people that I wasn't getting to because they don't read blog posts. And then I wanted to create more content. I love creating content. I love repurposing content. And this was just a great way for me to continue to create new content. And then there's all these wonderful things that came out of it that I didn't even think about at the beginning. But those are the main reasons that I just decided to jump in and start a podcast.
So what has been the most surprising thing that's come out of it that you've enjoyed?
I have learned things about people that I have known for a really long time. And I've learned things about people that I just met. I think the most surprising thing is how much of a kick in the pants fun time it is. It just is. I just enjoy the conversations. It's been really interesting, the morphing of it, because my first couple of interviews were people that I knew that sat at my kitchen table. Right? And so that's kind of how you start. You interview the people that you know that are entrepreneurs. And then it morphed into audio only through Zoom. And now my last, I think, 4 or 5 episodes, I now put them on my YouTube channel and expanding my reach through video and audio. So all of it's just been super exciting.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think one of the most surprising things for me when I first started podcasting was not really realizing the impact on my connections and my network, like you were saying too, like how amazing it is that you get to, talk to people at your kitchen table that but then it just expands out. And like here we were introduced at a networking event, and then now here we are, right? So it just is really cool to see how podcasting is I think it's one of the best networking tools. And if you're going to go meet people, have conversations with them, why not record it?
Exactly. Yeah, I love it.
That's really cool. So we just had Megan Barnhart on here a few episodes ago, and we were having the blogging versus podcasting debate. And
I'll have to go listen to that.
Yeah, her and I finally settled the debate. You need both.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I love that you were a blogger, now turned podcaster, because oftentimes we go the opposite way. What do you find has been the most beneficial for your listeners? Is that having a different way for them to consume content, is what you mentioned earlier. Is there been anything else that's, you found to be different from blogging versus podcasting for kind of like a return on your time?
So I would say that it's actually faster and more enjoyable to do a podcast than it is to blog. Right? I mean, blogging takes I've been coaching for 15 years. I've developed this 10-step process. I've coached over 1,000 people. So I have some content. But to continue week after week after week of providing content, reframing, finding things to talk about, editing, writing, I actually think that the process of recording and editing, and I don't do a lot of editing on my podcast. I don't go and take out all the ums and
we do that authentic editing.
Yeah, I don't do. I do the beginning and the end,
That's
and
right.
pretty much that's it. But I think it's much faster, and it's much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I would say I believe that I have reached an audience that I would have never reached if I just stayed blogging.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's interesting to hear that from someone who was a blogger and a writer. Like, I've always been more inclined to do the podcasting because I just don't enjoy sitting down. I sit down to write a blog post and my mind goes blank. But if I put in a microphone in front of me, I can talk about lots of things. So it's interesting to hear your perspective on that. Being coming from the writing background and being a blogger, it's nice to have that other person to create contact with when you're having a nice conversation, which is great.
Well, and it's interesting to me too, because one of the things I felt comfortable about doing a podcast was that it was audio only. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be in front of the camera. Like, I don't want to do video. That's really not my thing. I kind of like to be behind the scenes and helping and supporting, and I don't need to be in front. But I've gotten really comfortable with it, and now I prefer to do a podcast where I can actually see the person. The whole conversation shifts when you can see them versus when you can't see them. But I just think it adds a whole nother component of it that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, you've been podcasting for a little while now. And so take us on what that was like at the beginning, and then now how it works for you.
So I did a ton of research because there's a lot of components. There's microphones and recording devices and software and editing, just all of that. So it started out as I think I decided to do it in the beginning of December, my first podcast, because I felt like I needed 3 episodes to start, so it wasn't till the middle of January. But it was so just going through that process of what do you need and what's the format look like, and then you start and you don't really know what you're doing and you make mistakes, like you forget to record or you record over because you've never used the device before. This poor guy Pete had to come back twice. But the second one was...
what you're talking about, Jenna. None of that ever happened.
Never happened to you. But the first one we did wasn't great, so the second one was much better anyway. So through the journey, it's expanding on the way you do it, because like I said, I started with just audio and I started with just someone in the same space. But the other really fascinating thing to me, you grow as an interviewer, because I've never been an interviewer. So you kind of grow and you get more comfortable with it. But the other thing, I was thinking about this last night, I didn't have the person that I didn't have a podcast for this week. And so because I won't even go into why, but I didn't have one ready to go, and I do one every week. So I thought I'll just do one that's me. And then I started to think, because some of my interviews have been the people just talk and talk and talk, and I'm not sure how really engaging and interesting they are. So I thought maybe I think of changing up the format. And I look at you have 2 formats. You have the expert, Ask the Expert, and you have Behind the Mic. I'm sure you didn't start out with those 2 formats, but they came out of the journey that you have experienced.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And so that's, yeah. And I'm 6 months in and I'm looking at it evolving.
Yeah.
I think in anything we do, and this is probably putting my coaching hat on, but you need to continuously analyze where you are and what's working and how you can expand. And I think us being home for the last 3 months has changed some of the ways we do things and some of the ways we look at things.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I always tell my clients, which I found super surprising, they're always worried about making sure they have really great guests on all the time. And I said, look at your numbers, your shows that have guests, and then look at the numbers on your shows that have just you. Your numbers of your shows, which you might find this coming up now that you've done a solo show, that the numbers on the shows that you have, just you, are the highest numbers of any of the shows that most of my clients have ever created. And I always find that so fascinating because I think people are coming because they want to hear you interviewing someone else, but actually your audience wants to hear you. And I think that's a really great mix of, talking about evolution. We found, I don't do enough solo shows. I hardly do them because I really like the interviews. And then I was like, when it's about time to do my own, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm also going to interview this other person because I like chat, I like talking back and forth with that energy. But I look at my stats even, and the few interviews, the few ones I've done are the most listened to ones, which is really fascinating. I don't know if you find that surprising or not.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'd love to see that because that means people really want to hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
So that would be great. I don't know if that'll happen for me, but we'll see. Because like I said, I'd done one during the beginning of the pandemic, just about working from home, because I've always worked from home, and a lot of people were now working from home. And it's interesting you say that because I was looking at my stats, and that's gotten a pretty good number of, and I only did that a couple weeks ago, but a pretty good number. So that'll be something I'll look for as I go forward.
Yeah, it's interesting now. I'm sure lots of the topics that people that are looking for listening to things like are pivoting and what to do now, and like really like putting on using your coaching hat now. I'm sure there's all sorts of things your podcast can talk about now that's really appealing to so many people whose lives are just changing in the next little while. Like you talk about mindset a lot. Tell us a little bit about like what your thoughts are on entrepreneurial mindset, and knowing that our audience are podcasters or entrepreneurs as well. What are some great tips for us that you have?
Yeah, so I started out working for a company in Silicon Valley for many, many, many years. I became an entrepreneur in 2005. That's when I first started coaching. And I come from a whole family of people who have jobs, who still don't really understand what I do, and it's been 15 years. and at that time, all my friends. So I joined this entrepreneurial group where I learned, and I started hanging out with them. And I have just noticed for myself and anybody I know who's an entrepreneur that we think differently. We just basically think differently. We have different traits. We are much more risk takers. We are persistent. We follow through. We don't stop. And so I'm fascinated by that. And the other thing that I'll say is we have all had, anybody that I have interviewed that's a successful entrepreneur has had some big troughs, right? We have the ups and we have the, I'm trying to figure out a way to say it nicely.
Some big peaks and valleys.
Big challenges, things that we've had to get over. And I would say that is the biggest difference I see, because a lot of people try to be an entrepreneur and then they fail and then they quit and they go back and get a job, or so that is the critical thing. And then the idea behind it and how is, one, just go out and do it, right? Just keep doing it. You get kicked down, keep doing it. But surround yourself with people who will support you. I could never have done what I've done without the people who are picking me up when I'm, crying in my soup about somebody who said no, right? Because it all happens, or I lost a bunch of money doing something. So it's getting back up, but it's having the support people of someone you can call who's going to say, okay, Jen, I get it. Today sucks, but tomorrow's going to be a different day, and let's just move on. Put on your big girl panties and let's go.
Right.
And I think it's critical to have those people.
Yeah, I think having a coach in your life is so impactful. I mean, I've worked with coaches, only in the last probably 5 years, but that's really in the last 5 years where business has gone super, super well.
Yeah.
Where the previous few businesses I've had have not really had the coaches, or it's been a partnership, or we didn't have that other person, that mentor to really point us in the right direction, or help us, keep accountable, I think is what it is. Because when you get in those valleys are low and those peaks are high.
That's right.
And also I think a coach, I'm sure you do this with your clients, where you're there to also celebrate their peaks.
Absolutely.
As entrepreneurs, we're like, yay, peak. Okay, next.
Yep. but I like to hang out there because that's like, it just shows the work that they've done, and you've got to bask in the glory of the success before you charge ahead for the next, mountain.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you've had some really cool experiences in your entrepreneurial life too. It looks like you've done things you were telling me about, like, between real estate investing and
Yeah.
developing internet marketing. You're an author, you're a coach, and then you started as a sales executive. And so out of all those experiences, can you pick out a couple of things that have really been helped you have the success that you have today?
Yeah. So I started out working for a company, and then when I quit, my first job, my first thing that I started after that, so I sold software in Silicon Valley. I went from that
Good
to
place
land.
to do it.
Well, and so my first entree into being an entrepreneur was land development in Mexico, where we raised $5 million to buy these two big pieces of land in Mexico on the ocean.
Wow.
Like, so I learned two big things of that. One is the skills that you have, like the skills that I used to sell software, the same skills that I would use to raise money. I mean, it's all the same skills. It's a different widget. And then I had a mentor who knew about real estate in Mexico, and I had another mentor and partner who had the people that we could go out and sell to. So while it sounds like being like a 360 or 180 degrees apart, it's the same skills. And if you find the people to help you, then that's key to being a success in it, is not just doing it by yourself and finding the people who know what they're doing.
Yeah, like that. And I think, I'm not sure if this has happened to you, but I feel like with a lot of my friends that are coaches, they have this, at first they fear like, oh, I'm not, that's like, I haven't achieved so much already that I can't coach. But you really just need to be a few steps. You need to find someone's just a few steps ahead of you. So because they're still fresh in their mind where you are, and then they're
That's right.
somewhere.
And that's where I started out.
Yeah. That's
You just
amazing.
got to be one step ahead. The other thing, because I remember way back when I first started coaching, and I got a whole bunch of clients, and I would be in my room and I'd be sweating, it was just, but you're right. You just, be one step ahead, and two, really listen to where they are. I mean, a lot of the coaching that I do is I tell entrepreneurs, go do these things, because I'm a very directive coach. I'm not I don't spend a lot of time with the mind.
I'll be answering you.
Whatever, but
crazy.
if you're stuck, you got to go there.
Yeah. True. That is true.
So yeah, that's kind of my thought.
I love it.
Yeah.
You've developed a 10-step methodology to helping entrepreneurs make really an impact in their income. Like no longer, we don't need paychecks anymore. They're starting a business. You've got this 10-step methodology for them to really build substantial 6-figure businesses. Do you want to share at least one of those?
Yep. Yeah. So I was like looking, I'm like, where's my book? Here it is. So this is my little book that I have. This is my too, right? Amazon best-selling author book.
Sorry, what was the
title?
title?
So it's 10 Steps to Finding Financial Freedom.
So for those of you guys that are
it's
just
called
listening,
Quit Your Day Job,
Quit Your
10
Day Job.
Steps to Finding.
Oh, sorry, we have a bit of a delay.
Anyway, so so you want me to talk about the 10 steps?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So just really, really quickly, it starts with who's your target market, and the target market is the problem that you solve and how you uniquely solve it. So that's how I look at target market a little bit differently. And then we talk about what do you sell. We talk about a revenue model, so that would be forecasting revenues. Then we talk about getting new leads, networking and getting leads. We talk about email marketing or email online marketing. We talk about sales quite a bit. And then we talk about systems, which is all of the pieces that you need in your business to run your business. We talk about team. And then we talk about how to analyze it and revise it on a consistent basis. So those are kind of the 10 steps.
Awesome. All like important ones, and all each of those you could go into a whole book itself. So it's great that you've made it such a great framework for everyone to follow.
Yeah. Well, of course, I've turned it into online courses, and I've turned it into my coaching program. And so it is taking defining those 10 steps. And I have an ebook, I have a one pager, I have a book, I have a group, so you take the basic thing that you have, and you turn it into all sorts of different kinds of content.
My kind of lady, repurposing the crap out of everything. That's my favorite thing to do.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. I was just doing that earlier today. I was just turning a course that I had into a video, and yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like you can just get so much mileage out of your content.
Absolutely. So I want to know if I can ask you a question.
Oh, sure.
So here's my question for you, and this is a podcaster question. Have you ever had the experience where you interviewed somebody and you thought, that sucked? What do you do? Do you not publish it? Because my thought is, I have had two of those, and I'm thinking maybe it'll resonate with somebody, but I'm really interested in what do you do?
That is a great question. And, it's one that I've had a few times before, but not a lot, and I haven't had a lot of experience with it, but I can definitely say, like, if you get off of an interview and you're like, that was not good, it is your show, and it is okay to call that person back up and say, hey, I don't know what was going on, but maybe like the energy wasn't there, or maybe, let's try, like, do you want to try it again? And chances are, if you felt that way, that other person probably felt the same way as well. And no problem. And I know this is from a couple of my clients that have told me they've done this. And then also, you don't have to publish the episode. You get to that's the great thing about having your own show, is you get to have complete creative control over it. So at the end of the day, if it's not a fit and it just doesn't feel right, then that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that, yeah.
I was thinking maybe I'd have somebody else listen to it and see if they had a different opinion. But thank you for that, because they're not bad, but they're just not.
Yeah. And that's such a,
you get the idea.
This is a great topic, because, it's not something that is not talked about a lot around podcasting, right? Like there's the reality of like having a crappy interview. I mean, sometimes just, our energy is not there, and sometimes our synergy is not there with the other person, or sometimes maybe they had a fight right with it before they came on to do the interview. So there's all sorts of things that's going on. I mean, our interview right now, we're having a bad delay, and that could majorly affect the interview that we're having. But I think we're doing a good job handling it. But there's so many things that can happen in an interview that, it makes you not want to publish it. But I've had a couple of clients tell me that they've had like really horrible interviews. And when I listen to them, not knowing the situation, not having been there, not having been feeling what they were feeling, listening to it, I felt like it was maybe not the most compelling interview, but it was still fine, like, and publishable and okay. I mean, in a couple of instances, I could tell that, the host was wanting to get some answers over here, and the guest was just not going deep enough. And so, you could kind of feel that a little bit, but so for the host, that was like really crappy. But as a listener outside of that, it didn't sound, if it was fine. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't know the inside information.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good feedback. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those questions it's one of those things we don't really talk about a lot, but it happens a lot more often than we think, I think. I'm all about collaboration, and I had someone on my show just recently where they actually have they do, and then I didn't know before they came on the show, they have they're doing the same thing I'm doing. And so when they started talking about their programs and services, I was like, I'm not sure. I'm like, should I let this go or not? And, at the end of the day, for me, it was more about collaboration and, if I'm the right fit for someone, great. If they're the right fit for someone,
I have
great.
to cut that part out.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's funny how things get awkward moments in podcasting, right? Maybe that's what we can name this.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's what we can name in this episode. Where there's the dog that barks or the doorbell that rings. And one of my good friends, we were interviewing her as well, and her, I think he was 4 at the time, came in and started talking to her about having to go to the bathroom. So we did end up having to cut that one out, cut that part out. There's all sorts of things.
I'll share with you one of my awkward moments. I won't say who. It was before I did video, thank goodness. But we were on Zoom, and he was on his phone, and he went to the restroom with his phone on.
Oh no!
And I'm like,
interview?
What? I'm watching him going, and I'm like, how can you still be talking while you're going to the bathroom?
Oh, no.
I couldn't figure that out. And I literally had to cover up my screen because I couldn't concentrate on what he was saying, what he was doing, because I was watching him.
Did he not realize he was on video?
Awkward times.
Oh, on the phone?
You do not. About halfway through, he put his hand over the phone. So he must have realized, like, halfway through, I don't know, that he was. Anyway, awkward moments.
Gosh, that's super
in
funny.
Podcasting.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good one. I know I've seen, I've been on a Zoom call before where there's lots of people on, and, the coach is talking and everyone's there looking and, listening, and then someone's significant other comes in the background and is like changing and it comes in with a bathrobe on. I was like, oh, the whole Zoom call is watching this.
Don't people see what's on their screen? Like, if someone came, I'd see it because I can see my screen.
Yeah, well, I was on a
People are funny.
networking call that we were on the other day together, actually, our V team networking. And so I couldn't get into the call from my computer, so I had to go on from my phone. And when you're on your phone, if you're scrolling around looking at the person who's talking, you can't actually see your own camera. So maybe in those instances, people don't realize that you can't see yourself at that moment. So you can't see what other people can see.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, that's so funny. Oh, I love that. So any plans any plans for your podcast coming up? You have some exciting guests coming up. What's happening for your podcast down the road?
Well, so I don't have any that I will tell you because I haven't quite gotten them nailed down yet. But yeah. I don't want to tell any secrets. But the exciting thing for me is I've got a couple of interesting guests coming up. One of which, actually, Rennie Gabriel, he was on your show.
Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah,
I interviewed him a couple of days ago, so he's coming back, or he's coming on my podcast. But I think the exciting thing for my podcast is to do more content specific plus interviews rather than just interviews. And I was noodling about it last night of thinking how, and maybe this is a great question I can ask you. Have you done a lot of conversation interviews versus interviews? Right. Interview versus, two people pick a topic and two people talk about it. Because that's kind of what I'm envisioning my next step might be.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. And, one of the things that we kind of help our clients do is use the podcast as an extension. Like, so even if you do, like, once the recording's over, you continue a conversation with that person, and then that gets put into like a training program or a course, or it gets put into a membership site or something for your listeners, or for like the insider listeners to hear like an extra extension of the show.
Got it.
And I like the idea of doing, like, picking a topic and both the hosts. I think that what that allows really good positioning on your part, because sometimes as a host, when we're always interviewing, we're always asking the other person, it's our job as the host to elevate that person's expertise up. And sometimes we need to dumb down our expertise just to break things down and make sure our audience is understanding everything. And so by having an equal kind of conversation about a topic rather than asking that other person all the questions about their expertise,
Right.
I think that's a great topic. We have a client coming up with launching a show soon where it's going to be a roundtable kind of conversation about a particular topic around cultural diversity and leadership and that kind of thing. So that similar sort of situation is what she's looking at doing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I'm just kind of exploring that. So, okay, I don't know how much time we have. Can I ask you one other question?
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm the podcaster asking the expert.
Look at how the host is like, she's flipped it around. So now she's hosting and asking me questions. No, I like it. No, this is great. We can do both ways. That's all good.
Well, I have a couple of burning questions, and I have an expert, and I wanted to ask them, and then you'll come on my podcast, and I'll ask the questions there. But I've been disappointed, I'll just say, in the amount of promotion that my guests have done for the podcasts. So much that I started a competition, this summer share splash thing, and whoever gets the most will win. But do you have any tips for? I mean, I've given them what to do. I've reminded them. They have all the documents. I have sound bites and transcripts. So I have any advice on how I can get them to?
Yeah, I think it's the struggle's real about getting people to promote it. And I think, if we can just, be real for a second, because we have an audience full of podcasters and podcast listeners out there, you have to promote that show. You've given your word that you're going to. So by not doing that, it says a lot about your integrity, I think. So one, I mean, anytime I'm on a guest, I'm definitely going to promote it. I'm definitely going to put, effort into making that a reality, because the host has graciously had me. Plus, it's been something I said I would do. So I think, and plus, you've done all the right things, Janet. You've given them your information to pass out, which would be the audiogram or a picture, or, you've given them social media content to give out. You've ask them to, and then a reminder email is okay to send a reminder as well. We actually have one of our podcast managers that one of her jobs for one of our clients is to email all of his guests a reminder a second and third time saying, hey, we noticed you have not promoted, please promote. And I think the third thing is if you make sure that you have all your guests, make sure your guest has your social media links, so that you ask them to tag you in the post so that you're making sure you see it. Because sometimes, if we give them the benefit of the doubt, sometimes they may be posting things and we're just not seeing it because there's so many Facebook posts and Instagram and everything. It's hard to keep up with everything.
Yeah.
They just might not have actually tagged us in it. So if we ask them to tag, I think that's, ask to tag and follow, and don't be shy to follow up again. I think they're the two biggest takeaways from that. But other than that, making sure that we're promoting the show. And what great advice is to bring, it's not my advice, that's why I'm saying it's great. someone shared with me is to reshare previous episodes again, like 2 to 3 times a year, and email the guests or tag the guests and say, hey, I'm promoting this show again. Would love if you did the same 2 or 3 times a year. Totally fine. And then, because social media moves so fast that if someone saw it the first time, doesn't mean someone's going to see that again another time. In fact, I'm actually just doing that for a client just before we jumped on this call. I was going back to older episodes, starting right from the beginning again. And every week now we're promoting a different episode from the last 2 years. So as part of they've got a new episode coming out and we're re-promoting an older one. So
that is a great idea.
Yeah, and repurposing our favorite topic, Janet, repurposing content. That is one of the best ways to keep republishing it, reposting it, and the same way as with different people have different learning styles. It doesn't mean that they're gonna recognize hearing it and also seeing it in written content, and then in smaller bites or on YouTube, or many different ways of having that same content out there. Many times.
That's a great idea. I love that. I love that the idea of going back and promoting the episodes and then going back and encouraging the guest to also re-promote that same episode during the time that you're promoting that episode.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Just all great ideas. I was writing them down. That's awesome.
Okay, that's great. One of them I can't take credit for because that was someone else's idea, but it's definitely something that's been working. But I know that's something that a lot of this is going to be a great title for this show. Another awkward moment in podcasting is when your guest does not promote your show. I think, Janet, we can make a blog post out of this thing with the top 10 things that are the awkward moments in podcasting.
Yes, I think
turn off your camera when you go to the washroom. 2, make sure your kids aren't coming in the room. 3,
that's right.
Make sure you press record.
Yeah.
Because that is one that happened to me, is I forgot to press record in the entire interview, and I just didn't realize until afterwards. And months later, they're like, "So where did that interview go?" I'm like, yeah.
I've done that twice.
Yeah, well, actually, that was two different stories. One was I forgot to press record on one episode. That one I did rectify right away. The other one was I forgot to actually promote it. I forgot to actually publish the episodes.
Oh, once was this. It was my brand new recording device, and I didn't realize that it always overwrote what was there.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I learned that. And then the other time, what did I do? I think I forgot to hit record. I forget what happened, but it was gone. I don't remember exactly what happened, but it was gone. So
yeah, and it's awkward. And then, I can share another awkward moment of podcasting. One of my current clients now, before I was a client of his, like 5 years before, I interviewed him for a podcast, and it was one of my first interviews with someone who's a New York Times bestselling author and was like very media savvy, so like had media bites. And I had all these questions, and my podcasting audience may have heard this already, but I was so focused on my questions. I was not listening to what he was saying. And so the interview was so awkward because he was finishing his answers so quickly. I was scrambling. I was like, what's the next question? Oh my God. I wasn't listening to what he was saying. It was not a flowing conversation.
Right.
It was so focused on, it was, very, very early days of interviewing skills that were not there yet. And so I'm happy to say that is no longer published out there in the world, that interview. And I think I've brushed up those skills just a little bit since then. But yeah, so being nervous and being a new podcaster, right? You're looking at your questions, and now is why I don't have as many questions, because that happened because of that.
Yeah, I kind of ask a lot of the same. Well, I have a list of questions, and I never get to all of them. Excuse me. And I kind of know what they are, but I try to listen to the conversation and not really look at my questions and just figure out where the conversation is going. But there's always that moment where you're listening to them, and then you're like, okay, they finished what they're going to say. Now what am I going to say? And you're kind of...
Yeah, what's the next question? Oh.
And it may seem natural, when people are seeing it, and you can always edit it out if it's just audio or even video, but there's that moment of like, I'm so engaged in what you're saying, Michelle. Oh my God, what am I going to say next?
What are we going to talk about next? Yeah, that's funny. I mean, the same thing I think happens in natural conversations that we're having sometimes too. But it is good to have those questions beside you as like backup, just in case you need them. Do you ask the same questions to your guests on your show?
Some of the same questions. I have it. There's probably 4 or 5 questions that I ask everybody.
Yeah. Here's another good repurposing tip. So get all those same 4 questions from everybody. You can turn that into a book.
Ooh.
Yeah. And another great tip that somebody told me about questions. Oh, yes. Another awkward moment in podcasting. That's what it was. A client just shared with me recently that she in her pre-interviews, a pre-interview email asked them to go and listen to their show and review the show first. And there's a reason people ask you to do that. It isn't just because they want them to listen to your show. It's actually like, if you go into a show and you don't know, they're going to ask you like, do you kiss on the first date, or are you wearing pants while you're on Zoom, or are you, all these random questions. What's your favorite book? You don't have an answer for those. So it shows that you didn't do your homework. So another awkward moment in podcasting.
Yeah. Oh, I would. I don't know that people do, but I always give them a link and say, go listen to it, so you get a feel for the show and whatnot. I must admit, I listened to yours this morning.
Yeah, I mean, we're all busy.
Like,
I
do the thing today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't have time to listen to all of them, but you know, I think for those people that have those really specific questions on every episode, or like a rapid fire moment, or you know, they want you to like, what would you do if you were on a deserted island and you had to start a business with only $100? And I've heard that one on a podcast before. Like, if you don't know that question ahead of time, you're kind of put on the spot. You might, or what's your favorite quote? If someone asked me that, I could probably forget.
I use that sometimes.
Do you ever have?
But I provide my guests a list of the questions that I'm going to ask. Because one of them I ask at the end is, what do you want your legacy to be? And that's not a question I would want to spring on somebody without giving them a chance to think about that.
Yeah, see, that's great. Yeah, that's a good question. Those kind of questions, like, I think if someone asked me what my favorite quote is, my mind would just go blank, even though I probably have lots of them if we're just having a regular conversation.
That's right.
You just forget about those things.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Well, and I was going to say, I had one guest, and I think it might have been Rennie, who answered all of my questions and sent it to me, but I didn't see it till after thank God, I didn't see it till after I'd done because he sent it to me the night before and I didn't have a chance to, but actually answered all the questions and then sent it to me. And I thought, it's just interesting how people react differently to this whole situation. It's all about like human nature and how we're all different. And that's just it's not half, it's more than half of the fun of it. It's the fun of it.
Definitely. And another awkward moment in podcasting, I had a client tell me that he had people complain about having to go review the show before being on it. And he's like, if they're going to complain about it, then I don't think they need to be on the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the thing. It's your show. You get to decide on, you know, what that's about. And oh my gosh, I think we have at least 15 awkward moments in podcasting right now.
Absolutely.
We're building up this great list. We need to create a really great article on this and send it to all the publications, because those awkward moments in podcasting, people aren't talking about a lot, but they're real and they happen.
I'm going to take it on, and I'm going to go and I'm going to start a list of awkward moments in podcasting.
I love it.
And I'll send it to you, and we'll keep throwing, we'll keep adding
on that
to it.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Janet, thank you so much for being with us today. So Amplify You audience, make sure you go and check out Breakaway Entrepreneur, Janet's podcast. Janet, where else can we find out more information with you? Where else can we find out where your coaching programs are? And there were 10 amazing questions in your framework for your program of being able to create a 6-figure business.
So you can go to the breakawaybusinesscoaching.com, which is my my website.
Perfect.
And then there's the free ebook about the 10 steps and things like that are readily available on the website.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Janet. This has been fun.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And look forward to chatting with you again.